Everybody, let's get going with this week's webinar. It's a worldwide WiSH webinar brought to you by WITS Sport and Health. So a warm welcome on behalf of the Faculty of Health Sciences at WITS University and the WITS Sport and Health group in particular. A warm welcome to our South African Sports Medicine Association members and to everybody who's joined us. We have a wide audience, very diverse in terms of disciplines, and also from about 20 different countries across the world. So welcome to this seminar. And I think we know why there's so much interest in this. It's a really great topic this evening. And I'm going to let my co-host for this evening introduce that. Before I do that, some thank yous. Firstly, to the sponsor of these webinars, Lita Sina, our pharmaceutical company who's partnered with us for these webinars and allows us to bring them to you at no charge and facilitates the whole CPD process. Thank you very much to Dr. Robin Saggers, who's always in the background sending you emails and WhatsApp messages telling you about the webinars, and who's in the background again this evening to monitor the controls. And we really want to make this as interactive as possible this evening. I think you're all aware of the question and answer facility on Zoom. Please send the questions in as the seminar proceeds and we'll cover as many of them as possible. And then our speaker this evening has also got some interactive sessions during the talk as well. So have your cell phones ready, and he's going to ask you to participate in some of that as well. So I think you're going to find it a very interesting and interactive session, and you're going to find out how you can carry this forward and participate in this sort of process, developing a winning mind in your own environment, whether that happens to be sporting or corporate or whatever. I think you're going to find a lot of the principles that are shared with you this evening very meaningful in your own environment. So I'm going to mute and turn my camera off as I introduce you to Martin Skeepers. Martin is a sports psychologist in Johannesburg, well known, worked with a lot of individuals in sports teams, and he chairs our sports psychology interest group for WiSH. So I'm going to hand over to Martin, who knows a lot more about these topics than I do, and is going to carry us forward and start by introducing our two guests. So Martin, over to you, and everybody enjoy the webinar.
Here we go. John, thank you for that, and welcome to everyone who's dialed into this webinar. It's a great privilege and honor for me to introduce our two guest speakers for this evening's webinar, The Winning Mind. First of all, Chris Shambrook. Chris is the Performance Director of Believe Perform, which was established in 2013. Believe Perform focuses on performance psychology, well-being, and mental health for the sport community. Chris holds a PhD in psychology from the University of Brighton and is also an honorary professor at Staffordshire University. Chris has successfully combined his vast academic experience with expert practical application, evidenced by him being appointed as the psychology consultant for the Great Britain rowing team for 5 Olympic cycles. Incredible. From Sydney 2000 to Rio 2016. Welcome, Chris. And then our second speaker accompanying Chris is Duncan Woods. Duncan hails from Johannesburg and captained the South African men's water polo team for over a decade. Duncan also combines extensive theoretical foundation with practical application, having worked with international and Olympic athletes and golf major winners as a performance coach and practitioner. In addition, Duncan's expertise also finds application in assisting high-performing business executives and teams across the globe. Duncan has recently joined forces with Believe Perform to launch their platform in South Africa. So I'm sure you all agree that we've really knocked the lights out with our speakers this evening. So without much further ado, to Chris and Duncan, a very warm welcome. It's an honor to have you guys here with us this evening, and we look forward to you sharing your vast knowledge and experience with us. So thank you so much. And Duncan, over to you.
Thanks, Martin, and thanks everybody for making time for us this evening. Chris and I are both really excited to be presenting in this forum with you. And I think from my perspective, it's really wonderful to be having these types of conversations as we bring our platform, Believe Perform, into South Africa to really try and be a scalable and highly accessible mental health and sports psychology resource that we try and make available to schools, universities, federations and academies. I think probably a good place to start is to ask ourselves the question, why would we need the winning mind? And I think the challenge with sports psychology and with working with athletes around topics around mental, the mental faculty, is that we simply don't have, most of us don't have access to a Chris or to a Martin or to a Craig Carolyn. We don't have access to these guys often enough, and not enough athletes have access to them. So I think what makes this an exciting space for us with Believe Perform is the accessibility of it, the scalability of it, and really giving more athletes, from every level, actually, from every level, kind of access to skills, tools, and resources that can really help them develop this as a proactive endeavor. I think far too often we look to the mental side of things when someone's struggling. And Chris is going to talk to us in much more depth about that. But we see this as a proactive skill, something that should be built. Everyone should have tools available to them, no matter where you come from and no matter what level you're playing at. You should have access to these tools, and that's why we're so excited to be bringing this product to the market, and indeed to be here to talk to you tonight. So that's probably enough from me. My job today is really to introduce our main speaker, who's got wonderful experience, as Martin alluded to. And I'll tell you a bit more about that, actually, because I know Chris is a very, very humble guy, and he wouldn't tell you this himself. So Chris has been, as Martin mentioned, he's been with Team Great Britain through 5 Olympic cycles, working specifically with the rowing team. But I think what really I've always been so impressed about is, if you look at the trajectory of Team Great Britain, Chris has really been part of a dynamic rise. It doesn't matter which team you support, which nation you support. You've been part of a really dynamic Team Great Britain effort, I've got the stats here in front of me. In Atlanta 96, Team GB won 15 medals in total, and were ranked 36th country on the rankings. They moved through to Sydney, where in total 28 medals, and ranked them 10th as a country in terms of the country ranking. And then they started this massive and meteoric rise up the rankings. Beijing were 19 medals. The Home Olympics in London, 29 medals, which had them in 3rd place in terms of ranking. And then what really impresses me, after all the buzz and fanfare about hosting the London Olympics, they went on to even surpass that in Rio. So it just shows this fantastic program that Chris and his colleagues have been part of in building up this effort towards a fantastic Olympic effort. So in Rio in 2016, there were 67 medals won, and GB was ranked as number 2, the 2nd highest country in the world in terms of performance as far as medal goes in that Olympics. So just a really impressive guy to be around. You're going to get to know him. I love working with him, but what's always so impressive about Chris is just his ability to be super practical, super humble, and really just to make things really simple, and really he can connect with the individual, is what I always find so refreshing about him. It's not, hoity-toity speaking, advanced psychology speak. It's really practical. And I think without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to the main man, Dr. Chris Shambrook.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Duncan. I look forward to seeing if I can live up to the billing, and very much looking forward to making sure that I take none of the credit for the meteoric rise up the medal table that Team GB had, although really, obviously, a very interesting and sort of fascinating experience to be at the heart of, really, involved in one of the many successful Olympic sports for Team GB that was increasingly successful. I have reflected over the years, though, so if you look at sort of Kat Copeland and Sophie Hoskin here celebrating their gold medal in London, when you look at the sports that we're really good at in Great Britain, I'm not quite so sure it's all about the funding and the science, because, if you look at rowing, sailing, horse jumping, cycling, So as long as we can sit down, we seem to be quite good at sport. So, you know, I think that should be part of the future plans for us to sort of get more sports into the Olympics where we can sit down. So I'm not sure what that says about the British culture. But yeah, as Duncan says, we're really looking forward to sharing this evening actually some of the lessons learned through supporting people who were in pursuit of excellence. But equally, all of these lessons have been applied to many of the people who don't end up on the medal podium, and also to many people outside the whole performance sport environment, as well as all the people within the sport performance environment. So from the support staff all the way through to the athletes, the things that we're going to talk about today are really relevant, really applicable. And I'd really encourage you to do a couple of things here. Firstly, be really, really selfish about how does this stuff make a difference to me? What does it confirm that I'm doing well? What does maybe it remind me of stuff I used to do? But what does it introduce a couple of things? So really be selfish first, because if we understand these kind of principles from a personal perspective, it really, really helps us start getting into the detail of how we might support other people to find their way of connecting with some of the things that I'm going to talk about this evening as well. Then it becomes much more of a collaboration. Certainly the practical application at the highest level of performance psychology is really, really important. And that's certainly where, you know, for me, working across the 5 different Olympic Games with a number of different individuals and starting to get the opportunity to, you know, get involved in a Sydney Games where Sir Steve Redgrave was going for his 5th consecutive gold medal, but there were some breakthrough performances where other crews medalled for the first time. With that all the way through to the London Olympics, where we ended up with 9 medals out of the 14 available, 4 gold medals within that. You know, we actually went from needing to break back through to then maintaining the legacy. And certainly in Rio, even though there was a drop in the number of gold medals, there was the same number, if not slightly more, athletes who came home with a medal, which is one of the elements of rowing, where depending upon where you win your medals, more people get them, whether it's an 8 or a 4 or a pair or a single. So but that for me has been really important. And one of the critical things, I guess, is that when you look across all of these different Olympic environments, it really stresses the importance of athletes being able to have a really consistent approach psychologically, so that when they travel to different parts of the world, different time zones, different cultures, different physical environments and climates, personally, they are able to create an internal climate that is a foundation they can rely on. So wherever they are in the world, they know that they're going to be able to be have a consistent relationship with themselves, and how to create the thoughts and the feelings that allow them to step into that moment where they can find out how well they can perform on an Olympic stage. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on this evening, is that sense of getting into the winning mind, the winning ingredients. What are some of those characteristics that we'd expect people to be in possession of, who are able to consistently show up and perform wherever they are in the world? So great opportunity to learn here. And also in Sydney, I was doing a little bit of support work with a couple of triathletes. Athens, got the chance to work with a couple of sprint canoe guys as well. And so there was, and also alongside this Olympic work, also had the chance to be doing quite a lot of work with the England and Wales cricket board, so working outside the Olympic environment as well, within cricket in sort of through the late 90s, early 2000s. And so that variety of sporting involvement for me as well was really important, because you get to test out what are some of the consistent psychological factors across different sports and different disciplines. So even though every sport tells you it's unique, actually there's some common characteristics that psychologically, if we can put them in place from the ground up, it really does help a lot of athletes prepare themselves mentally to be both performing well, but having a really high quality mental health foundation as well. And obviously from a believe perform perspective, that's very important to us, that it's not just the performance psychology, it's very much grounded on, right, what do we need to do to build mentally healthy athletes who understand how to look after their mind and their emotions in what is a pretty challenging environment. At whatever level, we're usually putting a lot of personal investment in. It means a lot from our identity, so there can be quite a lot at stake from a mental health perspective. So that's very important to us, and you'll see some of the connections between that this evening. Couple of things just to warm you up and get you thinking about why, for me, performance psychology is a team approach. It's certainly not just the domain of the psychologist. There's, you know, there may be a person who's got some specific expertise, but coaches have been some of the best educators for me around understanding some of the requirements for the winning mind. The physios that I know have always been superb at providing a kind of a really important outlet for thoughts and feelings, and providing actually great advice when they are providing treatment. Doctors are a source of confidence and assuredness that really feeds into, well, we're all kind of contributing to the overall mental health and performance psychology of a team or an individual. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that we're all playing our part in creating a psychologically informed environment where we all understand the importance of the psychology, but those key principles that we're all working on that support the building of mental health and really good sort of high performance psychology from a competition perspective as well. But just run through in your minds about the relationship that you have with psychology, because in a lot of instances in high performance sport, as Duncan alluded to, we're still in a little bit of a remedial delivery approach. So we wait for something to go wrong before we call in the shrink to kind of do some rescue work. That doesn't work in any other element of performance sport. So when it comes to the physical preparation, you don't wait to get unfit before you start thinking, coach, can I have a bit of a fitness program? You don't wait for your technique to break down before you regularly do the drills and practices that keep you absolutely technically at the fine edge of your game. Tactically, you don't wait to be found out tactically before you start practicing different ways of engaging with the opposition or producing the performance. All of these other areas, there is systematic, ongoing, proactive approach to building capacity. And you know, let's get the message across that from a mind perspective, let's be thinking about exactly the same kind of thing. What is it that we want to be building? How is it that we want athletes to be developing their mindset, their attitude, their thinking skills, their evaluation skills, their communication skills? We don't wait for them to become subpar before we do something about them. And if we've got that kind of approach from a mental health perspective, we're also giving that message that the psychology is an ongoing important thing. We want to take care and grow a strong foundation rather than wait for the cracks to appear before we think we should start doing something about it. So there's a real sense here that, you know, let's join the mind and the body together and treat them all the same rather than separating them out. Really good planned performance psychology development as well as personal psychology development within training programs. You know, we periodize fitness work, let's periodize psychological work. Let's make sure that there's a proactive approach to kind of go, right, let's be curious about how good can we be from a concentration perspective? How good can we be from a dealing with pressure perspective? Well, it's a great opportunity just to sort of enter into a growth mindset around everything that we do. And from a sport perspective, we know that we can really target, you know, based upon the demands of the game, the preparation required mentally, the demands within the performance itself, we can target some of the things that are most important. So the ingredients that I deliver today, they'll give you a good generic foundation, but on top of that, you end up with your sport-specific version that is relevant for the preparation and the training, and then the competition itself. And I'm keen to get a bit of a sense as to where you're coming from with some of the kind of the psychological side here as well. So in a minute, I'm going to share my screen, and you'll get to go to slido.com, and we'll get a little bit of information back just in terms of what you're thinking about, what the winning mind kind of looks like, or what you anticipate that it looks like. So be prepared for that in a couple of minutes. I think if we get this kind of approach where we've got the proactivity and we've got things planned and targeted, I love the situation that we can end up in where all of us, from a stepping into the pressure point of view, whether it's support staff or performers or coaches, we get the choice. We've focused on the future and building mental fitness. We've created the psychological capacity to perform as well as the physical, technical and tactical. So we step into a pressure situation and go, right, we've got a couple of choices here. Does this feel like a situation I'm excited by and I want to rise to the occasion and I want to see what my foundation has done for me? Or is it a situation actually that I'm going to fall to the level of my preparation? I'm going to trust the quality of work that I've done and I'm going to sink into that level of preparation and enjoy having the very solid base that I know is going to give me a foothold to perform really well. And depending upon personality type, one of those approaches may appeal more than the other. But when you've got the opportunity to either rise to the occasion or sink to the level of your preparation, they are both hugely powerful from a confidence perspective. And they also do a huge amount to help engage with the performance environment in what we call a challenge mindset. And I'll talk a little bit more about a challenge mindset later. But the most important thing is that both of these things are grounded on a consistent and disciplined approach to building mental fitness, helping people be mentally fit for purpose, for particularly the moments of competition and stepping in to delivering a performance that is perhaps going to be a really significant one, but also from a training perspective as well. So it's grounded in great thinking principles and great ability to understand yourself and regulate yourself. So as promised, we'll now just sort of do I'll just quickly share my screen. Just keen to get a little bit of information from you. So either on another window on your computer or on your phone, if you go to slido.com in a browser and just pop in the hash 49375, I'm just keen to get a little bit of understanding as to where your thinking's at. So we're going to have a poll here, one in the middle and one at the end. I've just talked about mental fitness. And so if you're thinking about a performer that you know or a person that you know, someone who's got really strong mental fitness, what skills and qualities would you expect them to possess? What are some of the things that you readily see them kind of displaying? So we've got peace of mind coming through. We've got recovery from mistakes, confidence. You can put in more than one here, so you've got free choice to enter a few more things in. So we've got the consistency, the composure. And as you're doing this, just start playing with the notion that wouldn't it be really interesting if world governing bodies could start handing out medals on who had performed best psychologically, who had demonstrated the best clarity of thinking under pressure, who had delivered the best ability to recover from a setback, who had delivered the most grit in or belief in a given situation. Just think about that, because in reality, a lot of the medals are handed out as a function of how well these qualities that you are identifying here are able to be used in preparation and then translated into competition. So we've got resilience coming out really big alongside confidence, and those two things are very, very closely related. Composure coming out really high here as well as if we look at adaptability, resilience, confidence, they go really nicely together. Calmness and that equanimity to be able to kind of remain calm under pressure. Mental strength, I think that kind of nicely adapts as well. It's another version of resilience. So if we look at some of these things, they group together into similar kind of concepts. Grit, resilience, mental strength, they're all kind of similar qualities that we're looking for. The endurance ability is quite an interesting one from a thinking perspective. If you're interested, look up the work of Samuele Marcora, who's done some really interesting stuff on kind of the mind and developing the mental endurance, because that often enhances physical endurance as well. But we're really getting some sort of clear favourites coming out here. The focus one now coming to the fore a little bit more as well. So that's good to see. So, you know, we see here that actually, if we were handing the medals out based upon ability to be calm under pressure, how well prepared would our athletes be? How well would we be helping create that level of calm that was appropriate for them going into competition? Are we supporting that? Lots here as well around kind of the perseverance and the determination piece that keeps going on. So motivation, commitment, really important for us as well. I'd like you just to make a note of the ones that you think are most critical, because we'll definitely be referring back to these. And I'm hopeful that with the 6 ingredients that I present to you, you're going to have an opportunity here to see how the winning mind ingredients and the 6 pieces that I've pulled together will give you a very consistent way of approaching some of those things that you've just identified, if not the majority of them. It certainly provides the platform upon which each of those can be delivered. So thank you for that Slido feedback. We'll have another one of those in a couple of minutes. But really, this is just starting to shift the mindset a little bit towards, if we know what those ingredients of mental fitness are, and we know what it means to prepare someone from a performance perspective, it really means that we can start redefining what it means to win. So instead of just thinking about the medals and the top step of the podium, we're starting to think about, are we preparing the person to be able to step into those moments of significance, moments that matter for them, with a great sense of freedom and enjoyment, and they're really looking forward to it. So there's a really healthy relationship with competition. So are we winning in the development of mental fitness? And are we winning when it comes to how high we rank in terms of the mental health of those people who are choosing to engage in the sporting environment? And certainly through the high performance programs within Team GB and overseen by UK Sport, there's increasingly a look now in terms of what's the cost of the medals been from a mental health perspective, because, you know, that's something that hasn't always been got right. There's been a cost there for the individuals from their mental health perspective. So if we think about winning as the person rather than winning as the number of medals, we can then start to bring in a much more balanced approach where there's challenge and support, which has a real sense of safety to it, and people are far more likely, you know, healthy and happy athletes are usually faster and more difficult athletes to compete against as well. So there's a real performance benefit from the well-being angle here as well. So with this winning piece in mind, it's really important that we start just thinking about the whole process of development that we're all going through from a psychology perspective, but also that we are helping and encouraging the athletes to go through. So I'm always thinking, and certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, increasingly, these 3 things have been in the forefront of my mind. Success for working with an athlete or a team. Have they got great self-awareness? Do they know what their current foundation of mental fitness is? Are they aware of their personality? Are they aware of the stuff that helps them focus? Are they aware of the stuff that distracts them? Are they aware of the differences in terms of how they like to be communicated with? If we've got awareness, then we're usually in good shape. Now, sport is an impatient place, so when we've got awareness, we usually move straight to growth. Okay, I've found out I'm like this, I need to be more like that person, I'll try and grow. The trouble with that is that we tend to, you know, not necessarily accept the value of who we are. We try and change to become more like other people rather than changing in order to become a better version of ourselves, which is why the acceptance piece is a really important one in the middle here. And you'll get a lot through the 6 winning mind ingredients today around the importance of working out the right answer for me and accepting my personality, who I am and how I am, and accepting the value that comes with that. Rather than labeling things as right or wrong or good or bad, we start thinking about, well, if this is your preference from a personality point of view, or if this is how you know that you work effectively psychologically, do you accept the value of that? Do you accept the benefit that brings you? Do you accept the fact that that is a very well learned and developed and preferred way of you doing things? Because if we do, we can understand and value the strength of that, and then we can look to grow the strength further or add additional ways of engaging with ourselves to bring more range. So we've got this growth concept rather than I'm aware of where I'm at and I need to grow and I need to be different. So we miss out some of this. Under pressure, from a performance perspective, if you're happy with who you are and how you are and that you've done everything possible to be the best version of yourself, it's a lot easier to go out with a desire to test yourself and be tested by other people. If all you've ever done is try to become a slightly different version of yourself under pressure, it's likely that your confidence is going to be a little more fragile because you haven't necessarily grown to be the best version of you that you can be as well. So these 3 steps of awareness, acceptance and growth, or action or development for the last one, do keep that in mind as well, because the middle one, really accepting the reality of who you are and how you are, and then seeking to grow that. I find that a kind of a game-changing conversation with people. So that's a really...
If I could just come in now, I think a very practical example, and you've demonstrated so nicely with the structure, is the key jump from awareness to growth, or awareness to development is you know, when you're nervous before a game, is saying, well, I shouldn't be nervous, you know, snap out of it and trying to move straight on to fixing. Or the opposite of that, you know, the classic piece of advice from a coach or from a parent as you're going in is saying, you know, you should be confident, you know, be confident, which is spectacularly unhelpful advice for someone who doesn't really have that under grips. So I think the middle piece is a key piece in terms of, why am I nervous? What's behind that? What am I feeling? And what are helpful things that I can do to start kind of leading me towards growth and development, rather than saying, I'm nervous, I shouldn't be nervous, let me stop being nervous. That's not going to be a good connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the holding slide right at the beginning, there was a picture of Helen Glover and Heather Stanning. I worked with Helen a lot on becoming a world-class warrior. She was the best warrior that she could be to get competitive advantage from it. So the nerves were, you know, a source of competitive advantage. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to stop someone who is a natural warrior worrying. They like worrying, and it's a very powerful thing for them, providing it's used in the right way. So this stuff's really key for us. And so the 6 ingredients that we're going to go through, so I've kind of chopped down an infographic that I use with the rowing team in the build up to Rio, but also it started this Olympic cycle as well before I finished off last year. So we've got 6 ingredients that we're going to go through, and we're going to go through them one at a time, just to give you a little bit of opportunity maybe to do a bit of personal reflection. How good do I think I am at each of these? What does my base of winning thinking look like? You know, also to have a look and kind of go, right, hadn't thought of things that way. That's quite interesting, as well as the opportunity to kind of see how these things interact together as well. So there's a few of them that are internal about our conversations with ourselves, and there's a few of them that relate to the psychology of collaboration and working with others, and the motivational and confidence components that come from that as well. So we have got 6 ingredients. So number 1 that we're going to talk about is the ability to do emotion and thought control. And that being a really important part of the picture, where we've got potentially lots of different scenarios, lots of different meaning in different situations, different events. You know, there's a lot that can change externally. So if we understand how to be emotionally consistent in the right way for us, and if we know what the thought processes are that help us stay focused, as if we're being coached by a really helpful internal voice, what does that look like and how good are we at it? We'll then talk about robust confidence, and for me, probably, you know, I've spent the most time over my career talking to people about their confidence, despite the fact they're already international athletes. Confidence is the one that comes up the most, and one that is always worth looking at. So we'll have some time spent on that. There's some focusing stuff. So if we think about the cloud that came up, there was a lot of stuff on focus, a lot of stuff on confidence, a lot of stuff on composure. So those we've got our kind of first 3 covered in there. So we'll get into the detail of being able to do a right now focus. The 100% mentality, when combined with robust confidence, really help from a resilience perspective. So this is a kind of a unique thing that, so years ago I started talking about this, but it translated into something that became really, really powerful when you've done the other bits, particularly the robust confidence one well. The connected piece is very much geared towards personal motivation and having a sense of personal meaning and being connected to other people around you. And definitely through my career, I saw the best athletes were the ones who were able to sort of think about, who's my support team and how well am I able to become a better athlete by the way in which I exploit their expertise, their desire to challenge me, their desire to support me. So a consumer of support, and being able to make sure that is personalized and customized. But we'll get around to that one at the end. But the last 2 are very much around kind of drawing power and psychological strength from the people around you, with the first 4 very much being focused on conversations that you're going to be having with yourself. So that's where we're going for the next little while. So we'll start with emotion and thought control. And I think years ago, so certainly if I think back to 1996 and writing this marvelous little book, Their Mental Game Plan, Getting Psyched for Sport, Steve Bull, who's at the bottom of it, Steve was my PhD supervisor. Steve and I used to talk a lot about, well, what's this stuff all about? And a phrase he used a lot was, well, psychology is really just, the sports psychology is really thinking about what you need to think about. And then, you know, that's a really neat way of getting into the emotion and thought control piece. Psychology is thinking about what you need to think about, but it's a bit more complex than that, because each of us have certain things that if we think them, they're helpful for us, and certain things maybe not so helpful. And I would like to kind of, you know, within the emotion and thought control piece, to what extent are we tuned into this awareness of what works for me, and are we accepting of how it works? So instead of using the words positive and negative around this one, I'd like you to be thinking about, to what extent do I understand the helpful emotions that help me feel ready to perform, or that help me stay performing really well? And equally, what helpful thoughts do I have that keep me focused, or keep me engaged, that keep me feeling like I am sort of, you know, in the moment doing the right kind of thing? Helpful thoughts and helpful emotions, not positive ones. Because actually a lot of athletes that I've spoken to, some of the emotions they have, they actually draw on some things that we'd describe as negative emotions, but they use them in a helpful way to drive the right kind of response. Some of the thoughts, so the example of Helen being a world-class worrier, healthy paranoia, worrying brilliantly. What do I need to worry about? When do I worry about it? I think about the right things at the right time. So I'm tuned in and I'm accepting of what the helpful stuff is for me. I'm not judging myself, kind of going, oh, I shouldn't be a negative thinker. Well, why not? If your negative thinking drives you to helpful action, I'm all for it. If your negative thinking constantly gets in the way of yourself and you're taking unhelpful action as a result, we may need to rethink things. But I know loads of positive thinkers who it's unhelpful for them. They just think positively and they expect good things to happen. It doesn't drive positive action. So it's not being helpful for them. But the positive thinkers who it actually really focuses them in on the desire and intent of what they're going to do next, and they're really looking forward to doing it as well as possible with loads of energy, the positive thinking leads to positive action. So there's a really important bit here as well about being able to look back at our best performances, our best moments, the best, you know, training that we've done, how we've been thinking, how we've felt, what emotions have been around. That's been really key for me working with individuals, to give them the freedom to engage with competitive situations, to kind of go, I'm competing on my terms of the emotions that are helpful for me and the thoughts that are helpful for me. And I have the ability to work out where I am and then make choices to get me in that right emotional state, and choices to keep me focused on the right thoughts and the right conversations that I'm having with myself. And being able to kind of understand the differences in emotion and thought control, I think is really important. That, Duncan, I was wondering here, just in terms of your kind of team experience, whether there's anything from you of relevance around kind of get you know, this kind of thing within a team context, and the value of it when it's really embraced by a team.
Yeah, I think what I love about this is the kind of personalizing it to yourself. And I think there certainly was something that I would have loved to have stumbled upon 15 years ago. But I think in the team context, it's also interesting to understand that everyone else's experience is different to yours, and to try and, especially as a captain or as a coach, try and meet people where they need to be met, rather than trying to get everyone to a linear starting line, would be really helpful, I think, in the team context.
Yes, yeah, and, you know, I've got examples of rowing crews. So the bigger crews, so the 8, so you've got the little Cox, who's usually sort of quite energetic and is a frustrated racing driver who wish they were driving Formula 1 cars rather than shouting at people to row harder. Then you've got the other people who have got quite different roles to play, even though they're all doing the same kind of stroke. There's different things they're doing. Some people will be sitting off in the corner, just slowly mentally rehearsing, being really quiet. Other people would be off trying to chat with anyone because their energy's up and they're about to race and they want to engage and spark with people. There's other people who are kind of having a technical conversation, just reinforcing to themselves some of the technical side of things. It's a real variety. Someone's got their head in a book, just distracting themselves. You've got these different things that people are kind of finding their way through. And within the good crews, that's all respected and understood, but there's a point that we come together and then we're able to kind of get into our collective phase of preparation as well. But it starts with the individual strength here, which is essential. So emotion and thought control. Do you know your emotions that are most helpful? Do you accept them? Are you able to bring them about? Do you know your thinking process that is really helpful for you, that kind of keeps your mind, your mood, your energy in the right place as well? There's inevitably a really strong relationship between thoughts and emotions. So actually understanding both of these in harmony is a very worthwhile place to go to. And I definitely advise you to be looking back at those kind of key performance moments. So that's our ingredient number one. And before we dive into ingredient number two, which is going to be robust confidence, we'll just go over to Slido again. So let me just share the screen and we'll go to the second poll. Just interested in your relationship with confidence. So definitely answer this from your own perspective for this next one. What's your typical approach to working on your confidence? I don't really think about working on it regularly. I do something about it when I notice I start to lose confidence. I check in on it once in a while in a planned way. I have a weekly plan of what to focus on to keep my confidence in great shape, or I rely on someone else to do my confidence building for me. I've outsourced it. It's a lot easier to give it to someone else as the problem to solve. There's usually a pattern in here, which you will be pleased to know that you are following that pattern very clearly. So I do something about it when I notice I start to lose it, which usually means that you're pretty happy with the confidence levels that you've got already. But it, actually, if you don't notice quickly, there's been a missed opportunity there as well. A lot of the time people don't really think about working on it regularly because it's like one of these things that, it's a mental process. It's tough to work out what to do to actually do the regular work on it. Few of you have got it checked in and you've got a sort of it's being done in a planned way every once in a while. Few of you have got a weekly plan, and there's a couple of you who are relying on other people to do the confidence building with you. There's loads of fascinating stuff on confidence personality, whether we feel that, we get most of our confidence from ourselves or from other people, whether we get confidence from results or the process. Lots of really fascinating stuff to get into. But the big takeaway from this is that actually, doing confidence, when we ask people how important it is for consistent performance, it's usually the top factor. And it was certainly one of the factors on the strengths cloud there that we saw that gives us that sense that you all know that confidence is an important commodity. It's a little bit like a marathon runner knowing that endurance is a really important commodity. But I won't do too much endurance training until I start to feel a bit too out of breath when I'm doing some of my interval sessions or something. Yeah, so that's confidence is important, but we don't treat it that way. So this robust confidence piece is definitely a real kind of clear call to arms for you to be thinking about what is the value of systematically investing in confidence in that proactive way I talked about earlier with all the mental fitness stuff. How is that going to work for me? So thank you for the 90 of you who responded there. Great stuff. But so we'll take that and we'll build it into the robust confidence component of the 6 factors. Now, you'll notice it's robust confidence. So straight away, it's not just really high confidence for the sake of it. It's robust confidence that means it's pretty hard to be broken. You've got a base of your confidence that any confidence that you do have is difficult to undermine. Now, back in 2000, was involved with the England Wales Cricket Board. We were doing some research into mental toughness in English cricket, something that we were probably lacking a little bit for quite a while there, until we started borrowing players from other countries who demonstrated lots of mental toughness. But the cricket research that we did asked coaches to identify players who were mentally tough, and then those players were interviewed and we got a lot of information about them and their background and sort of their development, and got a really great paper that we wrote. But one of the really interesting things were all of those players who were defined as being mentally tough. They reported that it was just really difficult for them to lose confidence. It took a lot of negative events for them to start losing belief in themselves. And other players that we talked to, actually, their confidence was much more fragile. It was high when they were going well, but if something didn't go so well, it broke really quickly. These mentally tough players had the robust confidence. And that was being achieved by, you know what, having a really clear understanding of my personal strengths. So the acceptance piece, well to the fore again. Huge acceptance of the strengths that I have, how I'm made up physically, mentally, technically. These are my strengths, and I know what the value of them is, and I'm going to look to strengthen those as well as add to them. But it's about making the strengths stronger and ever more fit for purpose, and then seeing what other things need to go alongside it. That's really important from a robust confidence perspective. So are you in a position where you can easily articulate the strengths that you've got and the qualities that allow you to be a consistent high-level performer? And are you regularly strengthening them and finding other people who have got a similar strength but maybe a bit better so you can grow even more? Because a lot of the time we just get into problem solving and we undermine confidence by identifying all the things that people haven't got. We don't accentuate the strengths enough. We accentuate the weaknesses, and people's confidence becomes much more fragile. So that strength piece is critical. The performance focus is also key in here as well. So this is robust confidence that comes from how I've performed and how well I've played to my strengths rather than what the scoreboard tells me. Because lots of people get great reinforcement and great confidence from past results, but it's usually paired with great knowledge of how they got the results. So, you know, Catherine Granger, who I worked with through her career within the rowing team, her first silver medal at the Sydney Olympics, was in a boat, 6 weeks to go. It went really well. They got a silver medal by about that much, just beating the bronze. And if you'd asked Catherine how she got the medal, she was just in a good crew, but she didn't know what it was about her. As she went through her career, she became more and more understanding of the performance qualities that she had and how to use them to deliver the right performance in the moment that would maximize the chance of getting the result. But Catherine was an incredibly result-driven person. So she was able to blend that competitiveness to get on the top step with that desire to be the best in the world at knowing how to perform. And that's a very, very powerful combination that leads to a robust confidence. So really this is adding up to, what are you doing on a regular basis that's confirming your strengths, building in the right way so that you find it hard to lose confidence, that you really understand your performance DNA, and actually it's really tough for that to be compromised and undermined. And it's only when, you know, people are going through their career and actually some of the capacity just changes because of the aging process that we kind of go, well, actually, my strength isn't what it used to be. So now I just kind of, you know, downgrade some of my expectations. The strength is still there. It's still valuable, but if, you know, as long as I'm not trying to be the performer that I was and I'm trying to be the best version of myself now, I'll retain a degree of robustness of confidence. This one is really worthwhile investing in and thinking about how you build your confidence, who influences it, which kinds of information influence your confidence. Really get to grips with it. With Planet K2 being the kind of parent company and Believe Perform being part of that. Planet K2, we've got a website called theperformanceroom.co.uk. If you do want to understand more about your confidence personality, there's a few mini podcasts on there that will allow you to get into some of that detail. There's some really sort of practical stuff on there as well. Duncan, anything from you on the confidence front that kind of rings true from this robust confidence perspective, individually or collectively?
Absolutely. I think point three for me is a key one. Point three and point four, actually. Point three, I often say with the teams and the athletes that I work with, the biggest danger is not knowing why you won.
Yeah.
Or not knowing why you lost. You know, if you can come out of a game, regardless of the results, if you can come out of the game having a good sense of how the performance was, why we managed to win, what were the things that we did that helped us win, rather than our opponents were particularly poor on the day. So that's a great one to reinforce for the wins and for the losses. You need to have a really, really good, strong sense of why we won, and the ability not to lose. I love that as a construct. How looking at your confidence from the perspective of how hard is it to kind of push you off that place of feeling confident in your ability. I think that's a great one we can all aim to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this again is where, if we've got this as a collaboration piece, so support staff, coaches, athletes, all working on this, right? How can we help you build the most robust confidence profile in yourself? That's really going to help as well. So we're not just saying stuff to give people false confidence. We're seeking to find the evidence of building each individual's confidence profile so that they absolutely are aware of it and accept it. But they're competitive people, so just because we're doing this doesn't mean they're kind of going to become complacent. It means that the ambition that they've got is going to be built on a foundation where they can seek to go high, rather than a little bit of a rocky, fragile foundation that they're kind of a little bit worried about the first thing that might go wrong. So that, for me, with the emotion and thought control, robust confidence going together, these are very much kind of geared towards, if we can get them in good health from a training perspective, they start to serve us really well from a competition perspective. We train them, we build them, and then we can play with a robust confidence. We can prepare and perform with the right thought process and the right emotional control. And the other one here that relates to the competition environment specifically is ingredient number 3, the right now focus. Are you developing the ability to clearly and consistently focus on the right thing at the right time? And so practice training provides us with a great opportunity to build our selective attention. So are we able to filter out all of the things that we might work on, kind of go, right, this is the right thing to focus on today? And then when we're in that training session, can I stay in the moment and just stay really committed to working on the thing that we said we're going to work on? Minimizing distractions. If I do become distracted, getting back into the right focus as quickly as possible. If we can build that in practice and training, it stands to reason that when we get into competition and we've done our pre-game planning and we've kind of got the thought processes, we've got the tactics in play, it is going to be a lot easier for us to demonstrate the skill of a right now focus in competition. I will be absolutely present in the moment. So with the rowers, we talked about one stroke at a time mentality. The only stroke you can influence is the one that you're on. So we'll practice that. But equally, within each stroke, what's the correct thing for me to focus on? So at a particular point in the race, there might be a slightly different technical focus that helps. So I'm really confident I'll focus on the right thing and be in the moment. And when we've got that, now we're in a situation where we don't have some of the issues that crop up in competition, where we've made a mistake and we get distracted and we're not right now, we're right then. Or we start thinking too much about outcome and we're thinking about right in the future. My head's at the finish line while I'm still got another 500 meters to go. We're not right now. We've got a separated sort of focus in there. So that's why with the right now focus, we have the passion for the outcome, but we identify the confidence in the process to then be able to kind of reinforce the correct technical focus and be able to be in the moment with a huge sense of delight. I'm sticking in the moment because I know this is giving me the best chance of being in the future in the place that I want to be. So how good can I be at the selective attention, being in the present and getting the correct focus in there as well? So think about all of the opportunities that we've got to identify what might distract us, but also what are the things that the regular practices that we go through that help people select the right thing to focus on and then see how well they can stay present and be in the moment. Now, I stole this concept from Dr. Spencer Johnson, who has a book called The Present. The right now focus is very much taken from there. Dr. Spencer Johnson also wrote a book called Who Moved My Cheese, which is about responding to change, not about cheese thievery. But the present talks about the past is history, The future is a mystery, the present is a gift. And certainly from a performance sport perspective, we've seen so many things over the years where the inability to be in the moment and be present has cost people severely, because it's so meaningful. This is one of those things that's simple, not easy. It's so meaningful, so important. So we've really got to do the due diligence to build this one up and keep rolling with the flow. Given time that we've had, I'm going to keep moving on as well. But Duncan, do jump in if there's any of the other ones that you want to sort of hijack me on as well. So we're halfway through. The last three, they'll go relatively quickly, because this one for me is the ultimate skill for any performer in any environment. Athletes just benefit from it brilliantly. Remember, you've done self-awareness and self-acceptance. You've got a hugely robust confidence built on strengths. You know your level of quality and the preparation that you've done. You know how to think, you know how to feel. You're focused in the moment, you're ready to go. But actually the 100% mentality is really critical, because whatever process we're going through, when we're peaking for performance, when we're getting ready for a series of events, it's likely that there might be a little bit of the profile is slightly out of kilter. We may be still coming back from an injury, so not quite physically where we wanted to be. Something might have happened outside at home, and that might have distracted us slightly and kind of caused us a little bit of angst that we didn't need. On any given day for any given performance, we check in with the athletes, right, how ready do you feel? 10 out of 10, absolutely, all guns firing. I can't believe I'm in the best shape of my life, physically, mentally, and technically. 1 out of 10, is there any chance we can change the day here because I'm not feeling very ready? But usually, because of the experience that we've got, there's usually some kind of middle ground or higher number. The 100% mentality challenges everyone to understand the value of a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10 ready. If you can make it a 6 out of 6 day by getting 100% out of what you are on the day, if you can make it a 7 out of 7, whatever the number, the 100% mentality says, well, that's the me that I've turned up with, and I'm going to get 100% out of that because I value all of the ingredients that are there, and I'm going to see how much that can give me traction and momentum for the day, and I'm going to find out how good a performer I can be from a 100% mentality perspective. I'll reinforce that by being able to stay in the moment and focus on the right stuff. I'll be able to back that up by having the foundation of confidence, and I'll definitely be able to work on that. It's going to be a bit harder for me to maybe have the emotions and the thoughts that I need, but I know what they are. So if we've got that, it's really linked to confidence, but it's also one that from a support team perspective, being able to kind of go, look, you're 7.5 out of 10 ready. This is what's in place. You've gone from 0 to 7.5. That means you've got all of this. Let's see what you can do with that today. Let's get a foothold and build. And for me, there was a lot of this came from, the constant training, because the athletes had to use the 100% mentality in training. It's Olympic finals. Most people aren't in the shape of their life on the morning of Olympic final because there's been a cost of getting there. So it is a competition of who can get 100% out of the version of themselves that they are with the most enjoyment and challenge. And equally, there was loads of moments that I saw over the years where slightly ill or injured athletes lowered their expectations. They didn't worry so much about the outcome, and they just gave themselves permission to be the best version of themselves that they could be, having accepted that they weren't 10 out of 10. So the 100% mentality very much came from that, as well as seeing some senior athletes who lost some of their overall capacity, but were able to access more of the remaining capacity just because they got more experienced and more nous. And they were able to get 100% out of themselves more of the time, and their difference between a good day and a bad day got ever lower as well. So this is a really, really powerful one that is about deep acceptance of how good you are, and a deep acceptance that you won't always be in the perfect shape that you want to be on the most important days, but you're always going to be competitive when you can access this particular ingredient. Duncan, don't know if that one springs any thoughts off for you in terms of the 100% mentality.
Absolutely, Chris. I love that story you've told me before about Sir Steve Redgrave, when his kind of view on this was, I have to make sure that my 4 out of 10 days are as good or better than other people's 7 out of 10 days. I think that illustrated it for me really nicely. My bad days I have to be so good at my bad days that takes me to ahead of others.
Yeah, that's a kind of a smug place of confidence, isn't it? So his phrase was, on our worst days, we want to be good enough to beat anyone else in the rest of the world. So they could accept that actually, you know, even if it's not going great, we're still going to be really good because we've done all the hard yards with this stuff as well. So obviously they were looking to be the best version of themselves, but it brings that robustness of confidence really to the fore.
And I think, just sorry to add on to that, because I think this is something that we, weirdly enough, as sports people and people who are involved around sport, we have a difficult time admitting that we're not, you know, not at the top of our game all the time. And that's a bit odd. So we should really work on, you know, acknowledging where you are, accept where you are, and then move to, you know, to try and get the best 4 that you can possibly get out of 10. If you're a 4 today, try and make the most out of that 4.
Yeah, and you know, you've got to say that there's a lot of situations where you look at people who are unbelievably at the top of their game more often than you'd think is possible. There's usually some other interventions at play that have helped make that happen. But there are always some outliers as well, some brilliant individuals whose you know, B game is better than anybody else's A game by a long way. So you know, but yes, absolutely a critical one. So those first 4 are about the individual and very much geared towards, I think, competition. The last 2, let's just start thinking about you as an individual performer and thinking about, where do I get the drive and the energy and the motivation to kind of keep doing the things that I need to do, to keep getting better, to build the confidence, to really believe in myself, to take the next step forward, to go for the next performance, to ask for the next challenge from my coach. Where we know from a motivation perspective that where people are connected and there's a sense of shared meaning. So actually I've collaborated really well with my coach and I know what's important to them. They know what's important to me. And we've got some shared meaning in the project that we're both involved in, or the wider support team. So where there's shared meaning and a shared success, and we know the roles that we're looking to play with each other, we really get to build in a layer of motivation here that can often go missing. You know, I often talk about elite athletes being really good at being self-focused. Some people call it selfish, but it's very much a self-focused. They started the journey themselves and they continue that. Actually, if they might miss out on a key winning mind ingredient, if they actually don't seek to connect with the personal professional mission that the people around them are on as well. You know, equally, all the support staff have a desire probably to be the best support staff they can possibly be. If there was a world ranking of support staff, you know, they're looking to kind of feature pretty high on that. So if we start to connect the meaning with support staff, but also other athletes, other performers, we start to get that layer of human motivation that is so important, but we make sure it happens rather than just assuming that because we've got the same kit and we all chose to sort of go for the same kind of outcome, we're going to have that magical motivation through pulling on the particular coloured cap or shirt or whatever it might be. There's something in that because there's legacy involved in history, but that's more sparking personal meaning rather than, do you know what, given that we're the people who are involved in this right now, what's the meaning for us individually and collectively? How's there some similarity? How can we actually bounce off each other and get some great sort of, you know, extra motivational energy as a result of that? And I've talked for years about the fact that excellence is never a solo pursuit. So, you know, the best golfers in the world, we see that they've got support teams around them, the best individual runners, you know, so yeah, I just think we look at the support people around those individuals. It's never an individual pursuit. There's some individual brilliance in there, but it's supported by some collective brilliance as well. So being able to kind of connect with that, enjoy that, benefit from it, find out what that does from a motivation perspective is really powerful. And very interestingly, when you look at being connected, but having to be able to get the right thoughts and emotions and really being able to be in the moment. So where you're feeling really in control of your thoughts and your feelings and your focus, fully confident, and then fully connected, you really build a very strong foundation for motivation. So self-determination theory from Ed Dietschy and Richard Ryan talks to us about the importance of having a sense of autonomy, having a sense of competence, and having a sense of relatedness. So we can translate that into relatedness is connectedness. We've got that sense of autonomy where we're making choices about how we get in control and how we build our confidence. And then we've got the confidence and competence that go together really clearly. Within these 6 ingredients, you've got those key sort of influences on motivation. So it's given us the chance to keep motivation in good health and take care of that rather than waiting for motivation to go missing before we do something about it. So this one's a really key one. We often assume it. I think do the hard yards and find the connections. And very specifically, if we want to think about the modern world of sport and we think about the athletes on the infographic I had, exploit your support team mentality. So if we think about to what extent are you a great support team driver? If you're the driver of the vehicle, you've got all of your support team with you, you want them to be playing a role. You want them to be adding value. You don't want them to kind of be passengers equally. You don't want to, all as an athlete, suddenly become the passenger in this support team driven vehicle. They're just taking you places that you need to go. The best athletes that I've seen exploit training programs. They look at what's the coach put in place and how do I make that work for me. They talk to the physio about the core program or the stability program or the functional movement program that's been put in place, and they ask how do I make that work for me. They see the dietitian and they ask the dietitian, right, based upon me and how I work and the kind of preferences I've got, help me get the right nutrition package. They are superb at driving the support so that they're challenging the experts proactively to deliver the right growth for them. They're not just kind of going, it's all right, I'm part of a system now, I'm sure it will work okay for me. So we got this, again, the performance focus, the experts are helping build the focus and the confidence on the right thing at the right time, building the right ingredients. So, and it's about performing together. What expertise have you got that is going to help me? I'm going to challenge you to make it fit to me. And I'm also going to challenge you from time to time to find out how are you becoming a better support performer for me. So I'm being challenged to become a better athlete all the time. I'm challenging you to become a better person at supporting me as well. And I think that's a really kind of key ingredient that where we're able to encourage athletes as they get older through their career to engage proactively, collaboratively, adult kind of relationship rather than parent-child kind of relationships makes a big difference. And when you go onto the field of play, you feel that this group of people have got your back and you've made sure that they've helped you get there in the best shape that you possibly can. So that's ingredient number 6. Duncan, anything from you for that one or the previous one?
On that one, I think it's just, I'd love to see kind of athletes be a lot more interested in getting kind of mental health support or mental skills support, I guess, early on. I think as we touched on in the beginning, it's normally, when things are not going well, then they'll make an extra appointment to see Chris. But, if we can help be part of that changing of that stigma and getting the support early on and building it proactively and building that strong base, I think that's where we'd all like to see this going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the simple behavioural sort of cues for me was there was a number of people who would get in, because I did about 60 days a year for the British rowing team, so I wasn't on site all the time. And there was a couple of different approaches. There were some people who would get in touch and say, when are you next coming down? Can we have a chat before you come down? Let's have a conversation. And there were other people who would wait till I got there, who then kind of go, oh, I meant to talk to you the other day, and they didn't. So you got some of these people kind of being proactive, and some of them kind of. So for some of them, I just needed to have a big cardboard cutout of me to kind of be wheeled in and out every now and again to remind them to actually kind of go that talk to the psychologist, have that conversation that you wanted. But those 6 ingredients blend together really well, and I think for me, where you've got that internal focus of the emotion and thought control, the robust confidence, the right now focus, the 100% mentality, they're really, really great at building that common foundation of mental fitness. The additional bits of the connectedness and the support team driver really adds value to kind of go, and it's not just me on my own. I'm really getting that sense of being part of something with other people who are equally driven to me. That becomes really powerful. And I said earlier as well, these ingredients also help us a great deal set things up from a challenge mindset perspective. So if you want to look at the work of Professor Mark Jones and his colleagues at Staffordshire University, they've all moved on to different universities now, but Mark started looking about threat and challenge states in sport quite a few years ago. Really powerful and compelling stuff. In a high pressure situation, depending upon your mindset, your physiology will respond differently. If you are in a threat state where you're focused on the things that you're not in control of, reasons not to be confident, and you're focused on outcome goals that have to be delivered, when you step into the pressure situation, your heart rate goes up, but you get increased peripheral resistance. So cardiovascular, everything kind of tightens up. So we've got heart rate's gone up. So we're trying to pump more blood through a much more restricted cardiovascular system. Not efficient from a stress perspective, really not helpful. As a direct function of not feeling in control, not feeling confident, and worrying about outcome only. Contrast that with the athletes who go into that same pressure situation in a challenge state, focused on everything that they're in control of, all of the reasons to be confident, and they're thinking about, what do I want to learn about myself in this situation? How am I going to approach this? And what are the goals that I want to get that are going to give me something to learn and take away and build from? I'm focusing on my learning rather than just outcomes. Same pressure situation, heart rate goes up, total peripheral resistance decreases, cardiovascular system is more welcoming for the blood that is going to be gushing around there, and absolutely we have a better physiological foundation in the challenge mindset. These 6 ingredients, when we start using them and combine them with the right kind of mindset, that's where for all the Olympics, I was having great conversations with people about, right, it's Olympic final. What do you want to find out about yourself? Because we've been waiting a long time for the Olympic final. Now's your choice to find out some stuff about what you can do in an Olympic final. What do you want to find out? What do you want to learn? What moment do you want to take? You get, because if, this is a great opportunity to learn some stuff about the preparation that you've done, the skill that you've got, going on your terms. Because I know what color medal you want. That's not a learning. What is a learning is the opportunity to understand how you can regulate yourself and the choices that you can make in those situations. So given what we've been through there, I will just flick to the share screen again, and we'll do the last poll, and then we'll do a little bit of wrapping up before we get the Q&A piece. So let's share the screen. And we'll go to poll number 3, which again, just use, you've got one answer here, so choose wisely. I'll remind you of them. Which of the 6 ingredients do you think is the most important one for you to focus more attention on? So is it control? Is it confidence? Is it focus? Is it 100%? Is it connect? Or is it support team? Yeah. So which one feels most important for you to focus more attention? Is it 100%? Is it the confidence, the focus, the control, the support, or the connectedness? Cool. For those of you who are putting the support stuff on there, that'll be really interesting to see what the relationship is between you and where you get confidence from. Do support people provide you with confidence? Do you get confidence disproportionately from other people? Because that's fine if you accept that. You can use that to your advantage. For those of you who are focusing on the 100% mentality, really great. You can start tuning in regularly, day in, day out. What version of me am I today? So what do I think, how good can I be at getting 100% out of that version, getting a foothold and seeing where I grow? Really good to see that one coming out clearly as well. They complement each other really well. There's some really interesting opportunities for you to think about how by working on one, other ones get positively affected as well. But do really reflect back on the early bit around the awareness, the acceptance, and then the growth. There's a lot through today's conversation that's hopefully given you the opportunity to really start thinking about, do I accept what I know to be true about me and my personality and how I think? And, am I a healthy paranoia, brilliant worrier? Can I work on that? Am I someone who is really good at challenging myself and I need to get really good at that? Have I got perfectionist tendencies that I know I need to keep really working well for me and get the support staff to challenge me to make sure that my perfectionism is adding value? We get all of that really good stuff that influences a lot of these pieces that are going on there as well. Always pleased to see the 100% one coming out strongly, because I think that is, when you've invested a lot, you've got a career track record, when you know some of the successes that you've had in the past, look at, you've earned the right to relax into the version of yourself that you are every day, and the knowledge that it's going to give some good stuff. So really good to see those coming through. So I'm going to quit that poll now, so we'll stop sharing. So thank you very much. It will stay open, so if there is any of you who want to add it, I'm just going to go back to the main screen. So just for the last couple of bits here, folks, within the rowing team, what we looked at in terms of these 6 ingredients, encouraging people to support and challenge each other to keep the 6 characteristics sort of in mind. Have them as part of the regular conversations. Are we working on a couple of them collectively this week? Individually, which ones are you working on? If you can lead by example where you can on delivery, telling people what you're working on and showing them the impact of you being able to do the right now focus, whatever it might be, fantastic. And if you see other people who are setting the standards really well on a robustness of confidence or an ability to exploit the support team, excellent. This becomes just like any other element of training where we get some healthy comparison, contrast, learning with and from each other. So that's a really important part of this. Starts with the individual, but where we can build it into group language, collective approach to stuff, really powerful. And usually, so it should have been just finished up, but was, everything's pushed out to 2021. There's probably some end game in mind that is actually, that's a really good point for us to just test. We want to get to that position in the future to find out how much mental fitness we've developed, how mentally healthy we've remained in the process. But it is all about being able to put this stuff in place so that we mentally prepare better than the opposition, and then we execute the performance with the mental focus that we have invested in. So we're preparing better, we're executing with more confidence, and we're just constantly thinking about strengthening your mental readiness one day at a time and enjoying that opportunity to kind of go, right, I wonder how mentally fit I can become. I wonder what the limits are to my mental fitness, because I'm going to try and find them. And if we've got that approach within a whole support structure, then we're put in a position where actually mental health foundations are stronger, self-awareness and self-acceptance is stronger, so it's a lot easier to kind of manage the pressure and enjoy the opportunity to be on a journey of learning that has got some pretty worthwhile stuff around it. So folks, that is what I wanted to share with you for today. That is the 6 winning mind ingredients. That's the conversation. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the feedback on the Slido polls. And I think we're open for a little while for some Q&A. So I know that's been well and truly taken care of in the background. So let's see if I can answer questions, or between me and Duncan, we can get some good responses for you.
So Chris, thank you so much. Absolutely wonderful. And we can go on and on and on. Duncan, thank you so much. I'm going to dive
go on and on and on. I can.
No, we can't get tired of this. I'm going to dive right into the questions and see, if we can get through as many as possible. There's a question, Chris, do you feel that the best mentally strong athletes have innate characteristics, or those that learn to master their mental ability?
So I think for me, the answer has always been there is an innate trait of never being satisfied that they're the finished article.
Okay.
There's a great piece here as well around they are really good at the self-acceptance piece. So they work out the version of them that they are and then seek to keep making that better. And that's key for me. It's kind of, there isn't necessarily a set of traits, but there's the characteristics of never feeling like I'm the finished article and being really good at accepting me, and I'll grow me rather than try and be like lots of other people.
So that actually taps into another query we had, or question we had in terms of perception. And I think that ties into challenge mindset. Effectively, perhaps what someone's asked a question in terms of, so it's about how the athlete perceives the event that they're confronted with. Do I perceive it as threatening, or do I perceive it as exciting and an opportunity to show what I'm capable of and what I've worked on for so long? So tapping into, I'm not the finished article. My perception is this is another opportunity for me to take a step forward to that finished article.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what do I want to learn from this? How do I want to test myself? So what we see a huge amount, and there is a common characteristic of just sort of insane levels of competitiveness, but often that's either competitiveness with self as well as competitiveness with other people. They'll both will be high. There'll usually be one source of competition that's a little bit sort of the preferred one, but that's really important, because if you recognize who am I competing with, for today? Is this a competition and I'm really pitching myself against the opposition and it's going to be about outcome, but I know I can manage that? Or is it competition with self and I'm going to enter much more on a process focus in order to gain traction to get the outcome? That's where we're having balanced conversations. We allow those athletes who sometimes have a skewed perception to get a bit more of a balanced one. So I talk a lot about outcome hijack. There's loads of athletes that I see get outcome hijack because the outcome only becomes the be all and the end all. So when they face those moments of opportunity, they're straight in the future, they're straight at the outcome, and all of the preparation work that they've done becomes compromised because their desire to compete and win gets in their way of their ability to stay in the moment, focus on right now. So we don't want to suppress that outcome desire. We just want to give it a place to be focused. And that's a lot of the stuff that I see is, you know, really important about the perception and choosing the balance between process and outcome and making sure that I'm doing that on my terms rather than having the outcome hijack me.
Yes. So I'm fascinated at the questions because that actually leads on to another a question from perhaps a bit more of a philosophical foundation, but in terms of talking about competitiveness and how you compete with your opponent, we've had a comment in terms of Eastern versus Western philosophy, which I'm going to simplify. You know, in the West, it's about crushing your opponent and beating them, whereas a traditional, more Eastern philosophy is using my opponent to learn about myself. And how do we as opponents bring out the best in each other, which I think goes a step further than just an outcome, but using each other to improve our performance. What is your comment on that?
So I would highly recommend finding the transcript of Brendan McCullum, the New Zealand cricket captain. He did a speech at the MCC, the Sir Colin Cowdrey lecture, about 4 years ago. And it gives a beautiful articulation of how the New Zealand one-day team went out to start playing one-day cricket like they were kids in the backyard, collaborating with the opposition to create the best cricket experience that they could do. So it's brilliant. But for quite a few years as well, I've talked with the athletes around predicting some of the likely challenge they're going to get from the opponents and thanking them for it in order to kind of get brilliant that you've brought that kind of challenge because it gives me the chance to engage, you know, see if I can respond in this way. I'll see how much my strength is going to combat your strength. And in rowing particularly, where it's, you know, you've got your back to the finish line, and depending upon how you're doing, you can see the opposition in different ways. That it's really important, that sense of collaborating with each other's strengths to bounce off each other rather than just trying to stop someone going forward. You start trying to combat their strengths rather than playing to your strengths, and therefore you compromise some of your ability. And you know, increasingly that sense of competitive collaboration, because there's loads of that happens within squads. So we compete with each other every day for a finite number of seats. So we're good at collaborating to compete day to day. So why don't we just extend that to the real field of play? So it's all part of the challenge mindset and allows you to kind of step in with much greater equanimity. That sense of, you know, real strength and force, but calmness and inviting what you're going to learn. And I totally agree. The balance between, you know, bringing in a little bit more of the kind of the alternative thinking is hugely powerful.
So we have a question. One of our members of our audience was an Olympic swimmer, and the question she's posed is related to the support team. And what she's asked is, she had a very bad experience at the Olympics with a lack of support.
Right.
Ironically enough, from the support team.
Yeah.
And from the question, what I gained was a lot of self-centeredness and selfishness to the detriment of the athletes. The question is, now you're at the biggest stage, you're on the biggest stage, you get one shot at this. She's asking, how does one deal with that? How do you go about accepting that, or what does one do in that situation to make the best of it?
Yeah, so I'll be frustrated in my answer here, because that's why I have the thread of collaboration in building the mental fitness as a critical part of the ongoing, because you don't wait for the Olympic Games to find out that you're actually not really invested in each other.
Yes.
So you've prepared and rehearsed the different scenarios that we might be in and how we want to support each other. So prior to the Rio Olympics, I did, with one of the crews and their coach and me in there, we did a what if lucky dip. So we had various scenarios written out on little bits of paper, screw them up, pop them in a hat, roll the dice, who gets to pick it, who gets to answer it first. We did a whole bunch of scenario planning in terms of, well, if that happens, what are you going to do as a crew? What support do you want from the coach? What role do you want me to play? You don't leave it to chance. And it's incredibly unfortunate that that happened. And I think that goes back to the connectedness bit as well, because that's allowing individual egos and agendas to dominate, and also probably shows to me the lack of readiness of the support team for the pressure, and how they were going to respond to that pressure scenario, where they default to focusing more on protecting their own agenda than they think about, why am I here? So, you know, I think if we look at psychology of performance in the round for everyone, and not just the swimmer in the pool, but everyone around, is everyone prepared for those key performance moments where their professional expertise is on the line and required to be doing something at the most important time in the 4-year cycle, or however long it is.
So would you say if an athlete does find themselves in that situation, would it be prudent for them to perhaps take quite a radical decision and perhaps internalize and target just their own 100% mentality, dredge up as much confidence in themselves as they can, and actually just cauterize the connection with the support team because it's not adding value?
Yeah, so it's a cost-benefit conversation with yourself. Is it worth the effort for me to get them to kind of see my agenda and come a little bit more on board? Or actually, am I going to get the chance to find out how good I am when I've got pretty average support around me?
Okay.
Yeah, and it's that, but that's the bit where when we're under pressure and perhaps we're kind of mentally fatigued, having that flexibility of thinking and then the ability to kind of follow it through, where it's actually you're accepting pretty frustrating scenario, but then it's again, right, let's make the most out of it. Now, sometimes that happens from a conditions perspective. We certainly get that in rowing. You know, on the morning of Olympic final, you've got a 10-mile-an-hour headwind. No one wants that, but someone's still going to win the medal. So, yes. You know, it's accepting some of the realities of, well, sometimes it's not going to be exactly, you know, the beautiful sunny day that we expected it to be. And, you know, our Olympic photos are going to be just amazing when we look back at them. Unfortunately, it's going to be, particularly in London, it's going to be a pretty average overcast day with quite a bit of wind going on. So you kind of go, right, I've got to be able to be amazing, whether I'm delighted or frustrated or anywhere in between.
So the concept of winning ugly comes into play sometimes.
I think being able to seek to perform as well as possible independent of the conditions, and that for me is about, it's the perform ugly rather than necessarily win, because that's the key bit. Yeah. Okay.
Just in terms of acceptance, and going back to your first slide, that critical step of accepting who I am before jumping into the growth.
Yeah.
I think what we've got is a fascinating example, someone alluded to, of John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg, the two perhaps most contrasting styles in tennis.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Borg being completely unflappable and the Iceman, and McEnroe, obviously we know, having a complete meltdown, then serving 3 aces in a row and saving off 2 match points for argument's sake. If someone had tried to change McEnroe's approach, or would you have just worked with that temperament and perhaps try to contain it? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So I'd love to be able to say who you're talking about, because I'm nowhere near old enough to remember who those people are. However, that's not the case. So if you listen to John McEnroe as a commentator, he is one of the most gifted individuals articulating the psychological challenges and battles that are going on for people. And he does not impose how people should be going about it, but he tells you, this is the challenge, this is what's going on. And I think he was in one of those situations where his emotion and thought control was in that negative helpful box.
Yes. Okay.
You wouldn't recommend everyone goes down that route, but through the acceptance, you kind of go, look, from the outside, these emotional outbursts don't look that great to you, but they're bloody helpful for me. And actually the thought process that I have as a result of the outburst, well, you know, having done that, I'd better make sure that I sort of come up with the goods now, because I'm going to look like an, you know, extra average individual if I've just done that, and then I'm a bit useless. So I think he was really, really good at working with that.
It was a release of emotional energy, because the converse would be to carry that emotional energy within him, which then obviously is going to have a negative impact on rhythm and timing and so on and so forth.
Yeah, classic Tim Galway, performance equals potential minus interference. How much is it self-imposed interference by not doing the acceptance piece and rolling, you know, you kind of, so you carry that stuff around with you, you know, and you kind of go, I will be, so Roger Federer was evidently, you know, quite a sort of emotively expressive individual when he was younger, lots of sort of, you know, aggression, fighting with us, you know, but he obviously worked out that that wasn't helpful for him. And he was able to move into a place where it's grace and beauty and speed and, you know, all of that stuff that he does. So he was able to kind of work out that's unhelpful stuff for me. And he found a helpful route. So I think it's, you know, it's that ability to be compassionate towards yourself and kind of go, that is who I am and how I am. How do I make that work for me? Even though it might not necessarily always be the most comfortable relationship with myself or for other people to see.
Chris, we have a question at the start of, at your introduction, you alluded to mental skills for sport and which ones are ideal and so on. So for example, in contact sports or aggression sports, mixed martial art, boxing and so on, we've come across research that says confidence is the most important thing in those types of sports. How would you evaluate or work out which mental skill is perhaps the best for different sporting codes? Would you just go on research, or would you look at that in your work with your athletes?
Yeah, so for me, that's one of those classic examples where it's not necessarily about my perception of what the psychological demands are, but actually getting the narrative from the athlete. Talk me through your sport. Talk me through the demands in terms of training. Talk me through the demands in terms of the couple of days before competition. Talk me through morning of. What's important to you? Talk me through then the dynamics and the motive and the momentum within performance. And tell me what that experience is like for you, because I want to understand that in order that we can then start saying, well, actually, look, the ability to park thoughts is going to be really important, or the ability to be flexible in your thinking is going to be critical. The ability for you to be able to kind of, you know, absolutely switch on and off really quickly. All of those kind of, we can then, through the athlete's perception, you know, get in there. We can make some judgments. So something like cricket, you know, pre-performance routines, that skill for the bowler, for the batsman, pretty consistent. I will take control of a relatively closed skill for myself at the point I choose to by having a very disciplined pre-performance routine in the same way that a tennis player wants that for a serve. So we've got various ways in which the demands of the sport can be categorized, but in terms of getting the importance, absolutely based upon the athlete's view of, you know, how they play the game and what the demands, how they show up for them.
So tapping into, you mentioned flexibility, and if I tap into it, I draw our next question in from flexibility. Perhaps it's relevant now. With the Tokyo Olympics having been cancelled now or postponed, what interventions would you use with the athletes who've now been preparing for these games? You know, in their 4-year cycle, they're peaking now, and you know, to maintain that mental health and mental fitness for, I think, next year when the games do take place.
Yeah. So I'm still working with one of the rowers, and we had a relatively early conversation about, you know, what do you want to do in terms of, you know, being emotional? How long do you want to sort of give yourself time to be annoyed, to be frustrated, to kind of, you know, go through the natural response of the timetable being shifted. But once that's happened, then, you know, the athletes are very, very skilled at working with programs. you know, for me, it's getting through the emotional cost of having built up and then relatively late on having had the plug pulled. It's making sure that that has been worked through, and therefore you're able to sort of kind of go the acceptance piece of being able to move to, right, what's the sort of copy and paste approach to the program, but what's the unique opportunity that we've come, and so it's definitely going through that process of being able to replan and refocus, look at what's changed and what's stayed the same, what's been helpful in that change, as well as what's been a bit annoying and interfering, but go through a real kind of a decision-making process and an engagement of your attitude with the new process. And I've seen a lot of the sports in this country, you know, you've seen a lot of the narrative now is, well, actually, given that it has changed and given that we've got this much more time, here's what we're looking to do. This is what we're looking forward to. This is how we're replanning, because elite sport is a competition of planning, preparing, executing, recovering, learning, and moving on. And so, unfortunately, at the moment, we're having those skills of replanning and reprioritizing as the competition is becoming. It's had that extra element thrown into it as well.
It seems then, just in summary, the critical part then is identifying what the parameters are. What are my controllables? What are uncontrollables? And the base that I have to work from is that it's not happening this year. And so the sooner I can let that go, the sooner I can target my future and my future preparation.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to kind of have a time frame around that. And you know, so I know a couple of weeks ago when the first rowing race should have happened, that was a kind of a real trigger for a lot of the athletes. So do look ahead as well and sort of see when you're likely to get triggered by stuff as well. And
Super.
You know.
Okay, Chris, I've been advised by my colleague that we need to start wrapping up. So just, you know, from my side to yourself and Duncan, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating learning experience for myself, and I look really forward to applying those 6 ingredients in my own practice. I'm really excited to start implementing them. So thank you so much. John, over to you.
Thanks very much, Martin, for handling that. Duncan, for chipping in. I'm going to take the liberty of asking one more question because it comes from a patient of mine, and I know she's going to nag me if I don't ask it. She's one of our top triathletes, and she's very interested in the sort of exuberant confidence of some athletes. So the boxers, for instance, the top sprinters, the showmanship before an event. Is that just an exhibition of something that's really inherent in them, or is that their way of building confidence? Is that an approach that you can actually coach into an athlete?
I think for combat sports, I think there's a couple of conversations going on when that stuff's happening. You know, there's a lot of self-convincing going on, as well as a lot of kind of opportunity. If I can do it, if I can create any interference for the opponent, you know. So I think if you're doing that kind of stuff, be really clear what's the messaging that it's reinforcing to you, but equally if it is some messaging externally. But I think if we look at other combat sports, and someone gave the example of the kind of East and Western philosophies, you know, there's a lot of that which is about creating great equanimity and calm and preparing yourself in an incredibly controlled manner for combat. So I think it's the expression of personality in the same way that Usain Bolt as a sprinter is incredibly gregarious in the kind of the way in which he engaged with the crowd. You know, you think about him, but then you think about other athletes in the past who were just kind of steely-eyed, focused, nothing else. So that's about the awareness and the acceptance and the creating the stuff that works for them. To be honest, triathlon is exhausting enough anyway. So I wouldn't be recommending any of that kind of stuff.
Oh, you're right there. Super. Great answer again. You know, Duncan and Chris, you don't see all the WhatsApp messages that come through while the presentation's on. And all I can say is the response has been overwhelmingly positive. A lot of thank yous for the amount of preparation you've put in for us, getting you to come and speak to us. Now, WiSH Sport and Health is really a network of individuals with expertise and an interest in sport and exercise medicine. How can people become part of your network? How can they invite you to become part of their networks? They like what they've heard tonight, and they want some of those ideas and your expertise as part of their sport and exercise network. What's the next step for them?
Duncan, that's definitely for you.
Well, I think, yeah, I think it would be great if people could look at the platforms that we have. I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to do is make these things accessible. So believeperform.com would be the obvious place to start. There's great stuff on there, and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, trying to lift the general level of mental health support available specifically for athletes. So that'd be kind of the place to start. You can always follow Chris on LinkedIn. He's always got some excellent content on there, and we as a team try and support that. So yeah, this has been great. So John and Martin and Robin, thank you for having us. It's really been a great opportunity for us to just talk about what we're doing and talk about, you know, mental health in sport.
Brilliant.
Absolutely, Duncan. And you know, the other logo here, planetk2.com. If you want a kind of a bit of a broader view and you know, kind of a bit of stuff there that translating this stuff into other arenas and not sport, then, you know, take advantage of that. But as Duncan says, you know, just get in touch. Follow us on LinkedIn. I occasionally on Twitter. Some of it's political and not particularly well informed, but, you know, some of it I think I'm funny, but, you know, so you choose your platform as to which version of me you're going to get. But we would love for people just to start to, you know, help us build content here by engaging with the stuff that we've got and telling us what's missing, telling us what you love, that you want more of. It's very much a collaborative platform.
Brilliant. So we'll put that out on our social media. You very kindly made your slides available and the talk available. So we'll put that link up on our WiSH website, and we'll certainly keep in touch and hopefully start establishing a relationship with you and some of our athletes. We think there's going to be huge interest and potential there. And I'll challenge Martin as the head of our sports psychology interest group to take this a step further and start building conversations around some of these talking points that you've raised this evening. So thank you very much. We've gone on a bit longer than we intended, and that's just because it moved so smoothly and there was so much interest. And we really appreciate the time and the energy. Again, thank you to the backroom staff, to Robin for helping out. Thank you to our sponsors, Sinolita, and just stay on for Robin's slide at the end to show how you can get your CPD points. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.